We get live right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
At least pride-wise, made me feel good because you don't ever want to get swept.
And I've never done this. I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
If you ask me, can the Bucks win Game 5? I'd put it at
100%
confidence. Yes.
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
At this point, we don't know what's going to happen. You can get Game 6. You can steal it.
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
Winning Game 6 and 7?
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
I don't think they're going to win the whole series, but
I wouldn't wish this on anyone.
Hello, and welcome to episode 184 of Dear Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the staff of brewhoop.com. We're back, folks. We took a break once the Bucks crashed out and we did the post-mortem. Didn't really watch a lot of NBA playoffs on my side, but we're back for off-season recap so far, and with the NBA draft coming up next week, Wednesday and Thursday, June 26th and 27th, we thought it would behoove us to come back, see what's happened so far, talk a little bit of draft preview. And I am thrilled to have Jackson Gross and Kyle Carr with me for this edition of the podcast. Guys, I'm going to ask two questions of you to essentially bring the offseason back here together. How are you doing as usual? And two, how much of the NBA playoffs did you watch once the Bucks crashed out? We'll start with you, Jackson.
First of all, thank you. I'm doing pretty good. Just been trying to survive day by day, working 40 hours plus a week at Walgreens, so that's taken up a lot of my time. I'm usually very exhausted. Last week they had me open 4 straight days, so I was waking up at like 4:45 to get there by 6:30. So not fun, but doing better now. In terms of NBA playoffs, really not much. I don't think I even got to watch a full game after that. I was just keeping up with highlights and like goings-ons and seeing Luka absolutely crap all over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Part of that, I don't have cable anymore, so that's part of the reason why, but also just not a lot of time to dive into it. And the rest of my family necessarily isn't huge sports fans like me, so that was not necessarily on the TV docket.
So it was more so about access rather than you weren't so disgusted by the Bucks' performance that you just couldn't. It was a lot of other factors holding you off more than anything.
If I could have watched a full game, it would have washed the taste out of Bucks flame out of my mouth to see like Dallas or even like Minnesota against Denver. That would have been fun. But yeah.
Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I've moved to my new place. I got new furniture, came in yesterday. So at least now the upstairs is done. Just gotta eventually get to the main level. So yeah, things are good. Otherwise, I watched some of the Timberwolves Nuggets series. I watched, I think, 2 games out of that series, and that might have been it. I honestly have watched more NHL playoffs than I have watched NBA playoffs.
Adam Silver's quaking in his boots, knowing that he's lost Kyle to the dark side for NHL hockey.
Look, I have no strong vested interest, at least in hockey. So it's like I can and that's one where it's like I can throw it on and I don't have to pay that much attention. The Stanley, like the finals have been great. Edmonton have come back from 3-0, and now they're going into a game 7. That's going to be on Monday. And watching them play, I think it was like Friday night, and I think they scored like. I think they won like 5-2. It was kind of, they just blitzed them. It was so like, it's exciting. There's excitement there. There's nothing exciting about watching Boston win basically with the Mickey Mouse-esque title. So
it's true. I agree. I just wanted to ask that question to level set for the listeners and viewers at home who are, they come to us, they say, oh, these guys are the experts. There's going to be some takes. They'll have analysis about how the playoffs played out and what that means for the Bucks. I'm sorry, folks, we really don't. And that's okay, because I think what we learned is what we learned when the Bucks crashed out. If you're healthy, you're probably going to stand a much better chance of winning. And any of the problems that the Bucks were already plagued by, we're not going to learn much from the other teams to be able to solve for it. But it's good to have you guys back. Good to be back. What we're going to do is we're going to break this podcast into 3 sections. We're going to do a what we missed in terms of the offseason so far, kind of a rapid fire, and then what we want to highlight. A draft preview. We each have a couple of prospects and our needs for the team that we would like them to look at addressing in the draft this coming Wednesday. And then, of course, our miscellaneous section. So we're going to start with what we missed. I'm going to run through. I just tried to gather up all the things that happened, confirmed or otherwise. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jackson and Kyle to pick out things that they would like to talk about some more. So let's start in no particular order. These are just from my brain. 1, Darvin Ham returns to Milwaukee after being fired by the Los Angeles Lakers to become Doc Rivers' presumed lead assistant. I believe that's what the reporting, and was a little iffy around Sam Cassell, but we believe Darvin Ham is going to be the number 1 lead assistant. Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to suit up for Greece in the Olympic qualifiers. That, when we last recorded, was a little iffy because of the injury. Damian Lillard showed up out of shape to training camp last year. Doc Rivers revealed to Bill Simmons, and the Doc Rivers way of going, Bill, it's funny. And then he says like the least funny thing possible, which is that Dame was really out of shape. Malik Beasley has suitors outside of Milwaukee. The Knicks and the Warriors have been mentioned. I believe Jackson wrote a piece. It was pretty much confirmed by Chris Hayes, more or less, that we've seen the last of Malik Beasley as a Milwaukee Buck. Salute to you, Malik. Brooke Lopez and Pat Connaughton apparently on the trading block, ? Brian Windhorst of ESPN, he had some info and speculation around some other reports that on the team as it is, Dame and Giannis are the untouchables. Everybody else could be available as Doc Rivers looks to revamp the core. Thanasis Antetokounmpo tore his Achilles while working out, but he's still podcasting. He is going to be a free agent. There has been a number of fan posts on Brew Hoop from, it sounds like an informed Greek. I assume it's Alex Sarisis, his agent, saying that Thanasis might retire and become VP of player development for the Greek national team. We have no idea about that, but we hope a quick recovery for Thanasis. Final couple of points. Other assistant coaches have been hired, Jason Love and Greg Buckner. Jason Love from the Sixers. I cannot remember where Greg's background was. So funny. Cavs. Okay. Yep. And then some of the Bud era holdovers, except for Vin Baker, would let go. Presumably to go join Mike Budenholzer, who jumped in with Phoenix. The final thing I should note, for anybody who was thinking about, could Giannis have come back in that first round series? Doc Rivers on that same appearance with Bill Simmons essentially confirmed, look, the best we were going to do is like maybe late second round if we made it that far. And even then, who knows if you've gotten there. So a lot of stuff has happened. Only a couple of things actually confirmed off of there, but let's go to you, Jackson. Of all those items, what jumps out to you? What's most interesting? What would you like to talk about a little bit more?
I'll briefly touch on the Malik Beasley stuff and then go to my bigger one. Chris Haynes essentially said that he believes that Malik Beasley played out his minimum contract and it could be in line for the full mid-level exception, which is about $13 million a year. I don't know what team is going to give Malik Beasley basically Dante DiVincenzo money. Don't know about all of that, but just thought that was interesting. The big
it ain't going to be the Bucks. We can confirm that. We don't know who the team is, but it ain't going to be the Bucks.
Between the two nearly $50 million players in Giannis and Dame, and then being a second apron team, that's just not going to happen. The bigger one for me is obviously Brooke Lopez being on the trading block. And the reporting out that Houston told him that he might get traded if he's re-signed with the Bucks. So I don't know what they have over there cooking in Houston, but all right. But obviously Brooke Lopez has been a part of this team for a long, long time, I believe since 2018, 2019, memory serves. So, and he's been obviously the main defensive stalwart, finished second in defensive player of the year voting. Prior from not this past season, but the season prior. I just think, I don't know what type of center you're going to get next to Giannis. I would imagine it would have to be someone who can at least space the floor a little bit. I don't think you're going to try and go out and trade for Mitchell Robinson, which I think is a name that's been thrown out there. You're not going to try and trade for Clint Capella. That's basically Mitchell Robinson, but older. But yeah, I think it kind of shows how serious this front office is about shaking up the entire core, considering hey, we saw this group didn't work together and do what we wanted to. So let's look to change it, unlike a certain team that's about 90 miles south on I-94.
They're changing in a different sort of way. Were you surprised when you read that, Jackson, that Brook might be on the trading block, or?
I mean, we had talked about it in our Discord. We had talked about like it potentially being a thing. So it was like a 50-50. I'm like, wow, I'm surprised they're actually considering this. And it's like, well, he's like one of the guys that actually still has somewhat value if they want to shake up the roster. So I wasn't super surprised, but there was like a little bit, oh, did they hack in our Discord? Did they read our stuff? What's going on here?
I would say before I turned it to Kyle for his take on it, the main things around Brook are the age, which is obvious. Like we've been talking about it for a long time, and he's been an Iron Man in spite of that with the broken back and everything, like you said. But it's a weird spot because you kind of have to keep paying him a lot to keep that salary slot. And it's like, okay, at what point are we doing the off ramp here? The other thing you mentioned, the Bucks being a second apron team. The way that the CBA works is the Bucks cannot aggregate more than one salary outgoing. They can take in more than one player on the way back in, so long as they have enough roster spots. But Brook, because he's set to make $23 million, compared to, I think Pat Connaughton is like $9 million, Bobby's in the 12, I want to say. So
11,
if you're
12,
looking 11 to 12, so if you're looking at guy you can send out, you would have the biggest opportunity to change things stylistically and maybe get some returning pieces. It kind of makes sense a little bit odd man out, but it would be a huge departure in the way the team is played on both ends of the floor. And like you said, who's going to be the fill-in for that role next to Giannis in particular? What about you, Kyle? What do you think about the Brook Lopez speculation?
Honestly, I'm not fully surprised. I mean, I had kind of felt as though if there was any player that you can maybe trade and actually get value for, it would be Brook, because it was going to be an expiring contract. So, there's some appeal there. His skill set is still very valuable. Like we've seen, even with he still provides a very great skill set in terms of his rim protection and his 3-point shooting ability, while also still able to do work on the post. So it was one of those, like, if you were going to trade, like, yes, ideally Bobby or Pat would be the two that you trade. But if you really want to try and get anything worth a damn, Brook would probably have to be the one. So it's not surprising that he's considered an option. Plus, given his age, you're kind of knowing like this is going to be the last year he's probably in Milwaukee if he stays, just because I can't really see Horst wanting to once again throw him a large contract. Maybe if Brook is willing to do the vet minimum, but then it's kind of like, well, at this point, that's just taking play time for someone you need to, and we'll talk about later. So I'm not necessarily surprised. And I guess the point of like Giannis and Dame are untouchable, but everyone else is fair game. That also was like that makes sense. Like any Bucks fan can tell you that probably is the case. Whether like there's definitely people that love Chris, but at the same time, if you get a great trade offer for Chris, you're not going to say no to it. So it is kind of just that aspect of it. So I don't know I don't think Brook will get traded, but it is interesting that it's at least it's a potential.
The other, any surprise that Bobby Portis, I mean, implicitly in the core of people that would potentially be on the trading block, but that the reports we've gotten so far that the Bucks are gauging interest in Brook and Pat. Haven't heard much about Bobby yet. Is that of note to anybody, or is it just because they've been a little more close to the vest on that versus more open, like with Brook and Pat, do you think?
Well, I think during the trade deadline, Bobby was like, it was more like open with Bobby. So then maybe I was like, okay, maybe let's not tank whatever leverage we have with Bobby.
Yeah, true enough.
Yeah. And I think probably it's just like an open thing around the league at this point. Like if they were looking to potentially move him at the deadline, why would that change during the offseason? I think that's kind of would be my interpretation of it.
Yeah. I would tend to agree. I think it's probably more so, yes, like the fact that we're more open to business. We're probably already pretty open to business on Pat because the way he played last year, why wouldn't you? Brook is definitely the bigger one. And I think you guys are right that the idea that Bobby's already available, why wouldn't it make sense there? Okay. Kyle, what of those items did we talk about? Any other one that you would want to highlight as worth noting to you?
I would say one of them that was interesting. That's not my main one, but an interesting one is just Darvin Ham returning to Milwaukee. both like as a lead assistant. You know, it's kind of one of those things where most of the time when you get a head coaching gig, like you've become a head coach, it's really hard to want to take that quote unquote step down and be an assistant, whether even if it is a lead assistant. So it seems like Darvin Ham has still a lot of love and care for Milwaukee. The fact that he is willing to come back, maybe this is kind of one of those where he can get seasoned under Doc. Doc's going to advise him kind of like he did Adrian Griffin. So I thought that was interesting just because I wouldn't have expected that. I figured Darvin Ham would have just laid low, wait for his time, because it's not as though he was a terrible coach. So, he probably would have gotten another opportunity somewhere. But maybe this is also just a chance to like refine, fine-tune some things. If getting a reference from Doc or something, like having that might be appealing. Working with Doc and Bud are probably two coaches that most people would respect and at least look at it like, all right, well, that's a good option. So that's the one that I was like, oh, that's interesting. The big one for me is Giannis suiting up for Greek national team. I feel like, and especially on Twitter, there was a lot of people that were not necessarily upset, but they're like, why is he doing this? Like, this is a waste. And it's kind of like, it's going to be really hard to try and convince someone, yeah, don't go play for your national team. And everyone's like, well, Milwaukee's the one that made him the star and blah, 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 blah. Like, he needs to focus on his time with the Bucks and like, you got to prioritize that. And I kind of, for me, like, I don't agree with it. Like I said, it's playing for your national team for the Olympics as well. So, if you can have that opportunity, I mean, I don't have that much pride in wanting to represent America, but I also have, like, if Giannis does it, and Giannis very much does have that pride for wanting to play for Greece, I don't see a problem with him with doing it. I understand people are like, you've missed the last two like postseasons more or less because you got injured at the end. Granted, the one against Miami was more of a freak accident than like overused. Well, this one was clearly overused. So I definitely understand people saying like, maybe like take it easy, but this is Giannis. He is not going to take it easy. I have no problem with him wanting to represent the Greek national team. Plus, it gives him a chance to get more in basketball shape and get in that workout. As we saw with Dame, and I think David Dunn mentioned it in Teutonia World. It's like, yeah, there's being in shape and then there's being in basketball shape. And you can't use the excuse of playing your way into basketball shape for why you are being lackluster. So this gives Giannis more reps, especially because he'll have gone like what at that point, 4 months, like 3-4 months without playing any basketball and limited workouts. I don't think it's a bad thing. So for me, that's kind of like the big one. Let him play for Greece. It's not, I guess I don't see it as that big of a problem at this point. He wants to do it. And I'm sure everyone's going to be monitoring, make sure like, okay, like last year, I think it was like last year or something where it's like he had this thing with his knee and everyone's kind of like, well, hold on. Like everyone's freaking out. And it was like, no, we're going to monitor. We're going to make sure that it's not going to be like him pushing himself to the limit. So
what do you think, Jackson? Any thoughts on Ham or Giannis for the Greek team?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting just on Darvin Ham coming back. I think that's kind of a way to kind of get someone a little bit more familiar into that locker room. Not that Dockett and the rest of the coach that was obviously familiar with those guys, but bringing someone back who is part of like the championship squad and kind of bringing the band back together in that sense might bring some positive juju to the locker room. In that sense, yeah, not much else on that. The only other thing is having a brief discussion with Mark Stein about his reporting with Sam Cassell, that whole confusing mess. Shout out to Mark Stein. I'm just gonna leave it at that. And then in terms of like the Greek national team, this could probably be Giannis's second to last, if not last time playing for the Greek national team in terms of an Olympic sense, because obviously by the next time the Olympics are around, he'll be what, 30? Well, I guess he'll be 32.
33. He'll probably have one more for sure after this. But yes.
Yeah. But like I would say probably the last one in his like true prime, I would say. So if he wants to go at it and try and not carry, because I know Greece has a couple of good players in there, but be the main part of getting Greece actually into the Olympics, because I kind of like this whole Olympic pre-qualifier thing. I think that's pretty cool. I think it'll be good, and honestly good for his legacy. We talk a lot about guys here in America like Carmelo Anthony making the NBA or the NBA Basketball Hall of Fame because he's got 3 or 4 gold medals, even though he never won a championship. We still put that as part of his resume, including his national championship at Syracuse. So I think it could be nothing but good, provided that his soleus is completely healthy, which it seems like it is if he's going to do this, but I think that's just the biggest thing moving forward.
I tend to agree with a lot of the take. I completely understand why people would be frustrated about it. I don't want to minimize that. The idea that, okay, it's like split loyalty. Look, we're really trying to win a title here. I understand all of that. I think Giannis has a very particular relationship with the national team as well, given his background. I mean, he only got actual Greek citizenship after he made it as an NBA player. And so, there's a lot of complexities behind his story, his family story, his relationship with Greece. So I don't want to pass any sort of judgment on that. I tend to agree that, he confirmed like last week with reporters, he hasn't touched a basketball court. I'm sure he's done like shoot around, but he hasn't really done much physical work in the past 2.5, 3 months. And so getting the chance to do a little bit of workout, I don't think it ever hurts for him to work with other coaches, work with other players, work with other play styles. I think we need to continue to see him challenged to fit in a different way of playing. And God knows Europeans have a different way of playing typically than in the NBA for understandable reasons. But I think there's a lot of good reasons why him going to Greece is an okay thing. So I'm fine with it, especially I don't think Greece is a favorite to make it out of qualifying. So if they play just a couple of games and that's it for them, that's fine. On Darvin Ham, perfect fit in terms of bridging between the old Bud teams and now. And I assume he has a good relationship with all the players. So it seems fine to me. He seems like a good guy, all that sort of stuff. I have no strong feelings on that. The item that I want to highlight, it's the Dame showing up. I'm not going to say, because Doc didn't say he showed up fat, because he didn't show up fat. He looked like, to me, extremely in shape compared to myself. However, a little concerning that in the way that Dame had told Doc, who told Bill Simmons. So we're playing a game of telephone with a lot of different actors with a lot of different priorities of what they're trying to accomplish by passing this information along. One, Doc, probably don't need to reveal this to anybody. I would just not say it if I can avoid it, but we've gotten used to Doc saying things he shouldn't say just because, he gets on the mic and he gets rolling, which is fine. Dame told Doc that when the Miami move didn't happen right away, he was afraid of getting injured and I guess thereby being stuck in Portland or something along those lines. Now, I think you can have the charitable read and say, oh, he was like, he wanted to be physically available for whatever team or still be available. He really didn't want to stay in Portland for a lot of reasons. But also the unspoken part is he totally screwed whatever team he was going to go to. And unfortunately for us, we happened to be that team. And you could tell throughout the season, there was some stuff that was off with Dame. I hope he's going all out this summer to rectify that. But doesn't, a little questionable in terms of the professionalism on Damian Lillard that he said, oh, I was just kind of chilling. It's like, well, okay, cool. Appreciate that. You make a lot of money to just be chilling, but who am I to cast aspersions, I suppose. So interesting, unfortunate. I think that's a interesting other aspect to the Lillard mythos that we've had built up over the years of the ultimate competitor, the ultimate professional. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff there was, especially a year ago, a lot of stuff going on in his personal life. So there are mitigating circumstances, but just very interesting that that happened. And then Doc also felt comfortable sharing that on one of the biggest basketball podcasts in the world. But, that's what Doc does. So any thoughts on the Dame situation from anyone?
I mean, I get why if what Dame was trying to think of makes sense. I'm sure if he had gotten hurt, as long as the injury wasn't serious, Miami would have still been very willing to make the trade. like they would have been like, oh, you're hurt for the first month of the season. That's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, we weren't going to play you anyhow, so don't worry about that. You're good.
Right. Like we're fine. We need you healthy in April, May, and hopefully June. We don't care about, October. But so there's that. Still an excuse. Yeah, I guess you can come, like, you still got to be in shape. Like, you still got to be like ready to go, hit the ground running. That's still, to me, it's like, all right, that doesn't excuse it. Doc, I don't know. Again, why do you do this? Why are you doing this? You are your own quote. I don't understand why you're doing this. We didn't need to know this. It doesn't help anybody.
Especially because it's like it happened pre-Doc, so it was like, what? I didn't understand what he was trying to gain. Besides, and it wasn't even like people were really. I mean, people of course were ragging on Doc because that's just what people do with Doc. Again, for understandable reasons. But like this story itself doesn't take any heat off of Doc at all, outside of just like making Dame look bad. So it was strange, but it's like Kyle said. I don't know why you're doing this, and that will continue to be the case with Doc. Jackson, any thoughts on Dame and Doc at all?
Yeah. First of all, I want to know, like, did Dame tell Doc this? Is that?
I think so. I think the way it was couched is like when there must have been like a kumbaya session, and in the course of that, Dame had like revealed to Doc, like, oh yeah, it was like really tough at the start of the season because I came in out of shape, more or less. So I think that's how it came up. It was like a level setting when Doc came in, I believe, is how it happened.
Okay. So that makes sense. I thought it was like, first of all, why would just Dame say this at all to Doc? Like, what
I don't know either. There's so many questions that could be asked about why is X telling Y this, and this is just all the way down. Like there was bad decisions made across the board all the way through.
Okay, so at least there's like a plausible reason why Dame would tell this to Doc. So okay, I can pass that. But like, Doc, like why? You keep making Marquette look bad at this point, like by doing this type of stuff. You're making Milwaukee look bad, you're making the Bucks look bad, you're making yourself look bad, and by extension, you're making Marquette look bad. Like, you don't need to tell us this. Like, there is no reason. Like, oh my god, this. I just always look back at all the stuff he said on Sirius XM during the All-Star break, and I'm like, oh my god!
It was like a train wreck. Every hour there was a new Doc Rivers quote. It's like, why are people? Doc, stop talking to people. Stop going on every interview. Just because somebody gives you a mic doesn't mean you need to hop on it and start going crazy with it. It was amazing.
Like it is like a reporter's dream to have like a coach be that. Like, no offense. But at the same time, there's like, you gotta know like when to say stuff and when not to say stuff, and saying like, oh yeah, Dame showed up out of shape coming in Milwaukee because he was scared to be injured. It's like, first of all, on Dame's side of things, it's like you could have just ran on a treadmill or just gone on runs or like done sprints or stuff. Like if you're worried about doing basketball specific stuff, that's fine. But still, like, run, do cardio, like stay in like good physical condition.
Get on a rowing machine. I don't know.
Yeah, or like getting on an elliptical. I don't care. Like, I just don't get it from that end. And then yeah, Doc, why? You didn't need to say any of this. Like, you came in like late January, early February. There's like no excuse for saying Dame was out of shape in like October and November. I'd assume by January or February, Dame was in playing shape.
Yeah. It was an interesting situation. I'm very curious. I hope Eric Dame asks Dame a question about that. Like, hey, so are you in shape for this when we get to training camp? So Eric, if you're listening, this is your time to shine. And I do want to say, I forgot to add one thing on Darvin Ham. The ultimate conspiracy theory is that Darvin has been brought in as the coach to be because Doc Rivers is angling for the president of basketball operations. Keep an eye on this space. The streets are saying the conspiracy is going deep, and I am here for it. So, all right, that's what we got going on in the offseason. Sorry to the non-Darvin assistant coaches who we did not give a lot of shine to, but quite frankly, I have no idea what you do. So I hope you're good at your jobs. All right, we'll transition here into the draft discussion. I want to set the table one more time with a couple of facts about what is going to happen very soon in terms of the free agents for the Bucks. And then what I'm going to ask all of us to do is talk about what we think the needs for the team in light of the free agents and the roster construction player types that we want to keep an eye on. And then we'll kind of discuss a couple of prospects that we think would be a fit there, especially at pick 23. So quick rundown, free agents to be for the Bucks for everybody's note. This is from a Monday Morning Media Roundup article a couple weeks ago. So Thanasis, who is 31, we have his bird rights. He has a torn Achilles. We pray to God he's retiring. This is it. Malik Beasley, 27. We do not have his bird rights. I have here, he has a shimmy dance and wish casted defense. Great shooter. Probably going to make money somewhere else. So odds of him coming back pretty low. Patrick Beverley, age 35. We do not have his bird rights. We can give him a raise. It's I can't remember what the percentage raise, but we can give him a raise over his vet min deal from last year. It wouldn't be a massive raise, but we can do it without it impinging much on the cap. But he does have the 4-game suspension. He was talking about how he wants a raise from somebody. So we'll see about that. Jay Crowder, age 33. We do have his bird rights. I also wrote down, please God, not again. This guy stinks. So we hope, we pray that Jay Crowder, the pride of Marquette, is no longer a Buck by the time we record our next podcast. Danilo Gallinari, age 35. We do not have his bird rights. He is an old Italian guy. He is a doc guy. He is probably the first free agent deal the Bucks will get done once free agency opens. Final guy, Ty Washington, 22. We do not have his bird rights. He was on the team, was my note for him. So that's the free agents to be for the Bucks. And then for the draft, the Bucks right now have pick 23. They swapped with New Orleans based off of the Drew Holiday trade. They had a pick swap. So 23 overall and then 33 overall. And a reminder for people as well, the draft is happening 2 rounds, 1 each night. So the first round will be done all Wednesday. Then teams will have a chance to kind of let the dust settle, talk through whatever trades they like in the second round. Second round is on Thursday. Pick 33 right now for the Bucks. So that's what we got going on. I want to start with, let's go with you, Kyle. Based off the free agents, based off the team, we have a couple of rumors about what's going on in terms of the roster construction. As far as the draft, what were the needs? It kind of applies to the team overall, but what were your main needs you wanted to see addressed?
So the biggest thing for me was athleticism, just dudes that are athletic. And I don't need like super athletes. I just need can move from side to side without gasping for air, can have some strength and not get overpowered by, just simple athleticism. So I had that as the main one. I also had a backup guard, whether that is a primary ball handler or a 2-guard. I feel as though right now that's probably the weakest area Milwaukee has. And then a Brook Lopez replacement, because as we have talked about, the Bucks might trade him. Brook Lopez is also pretty old. His contract's expiring. So I had a Brook replacement or someone just to fill in at the meantime. And then I also just put wings because Milwaukee can always use more wing depth with Jay Crowder, hopefully not coming back, with potentially Pat Connaughton getting traded. I don't believe in Marjan. So right now you're kind of looking at Andre Jackson Jr. and Chris Middleton as your only, and AJ Green as your only reliable wings. So
Jackson, how about you? What were you, when you were thinking about the draft, what were your main needs that you were thinking might be addressed that way?
Mine are very similar to Kyle's. Mine was more so a true backup point guard. Rather than just either guard. I do agree that shooting guard is probably the weakest because right now either you're going to be starting AJ Green or you're moving Chris Middleton to shooting guard and you're starting Andre Jackson Jr. So I agree with that, but I do think that as much as I love Patrick Beverley's tenacity, he is also basically Bobby Portis, but a point guard and old. So
it's true. Yeah, it's true.
I would love to see the Bucks have a true backup point guard because between Cam Payne and Patrick Beverley, I don't feel like they really had an actual backup point guard. Cam Payne was just catch and shoot and not much else, and Patrick Beverley was kind of defense and nothing else other than throwing accurate passes at Pacers fans. But that was the first one. I also agree with Kyle, backup wings. Like I said, like he said, outside of AJ Green, Ajax, and Middleton, the wing depth is paper thin, both in pending free agents and guys who are already on the team outside of that. And then they also agree center of the future, whether that's because Brook Lopez is traded or because Brook Lopez is old, I think, or if they trade Bobby Portis and have whoever they draft sit behind Brook Lopez for a year, which honestly I wouldn't mind that much. I think that'd be pretty cool. So yeah, those are my big three. I think honestly I'd rather spend like shooting guard on a like in free agency, see if we get someone that route. And because I think the point guard and the center depth in this draft is there a lot more than it is in shooting guards necessarily.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Mine were pretty simple. Again, very similar, which makes sense. We've watched the team. We know what the issues are. Backup guard, either position. The idea being, like you said, unless we address that shooting guard spot through free agency, you know, if Pat Bev is back, I could see a world where he might slot in as one of the guards. I mean, he was starting in the playoffs for injury reasons, but he was there, he was available. And regardless of how you break it down, like, okay, let's say AJ Green and Kyle's dream has finally come true, a full circle. AJ Green is an NBA starter on a championship contender. You're still going to need somebody else to be the backup. And even if Pat Bev comes back, he is 35 going on 36. Like, you got to have the long-term plan at some point. And then center of the future was my other one. I don't think any of us think whoever the draft pick at 23 is going to be, that they're going to be a starter, but you have a guy who might be a slightly different option off the bench in situational areas. And like you said, you kind of build up, maybe they are the Brook replacement in the future, or just a stylistic change is all. So sounds like we're kind of across the board in similar spots. I think what we'll do is we'll work from tallest guy, work our way backwards. So we're going to start with the center. And I'm going to go with you, Jackson. Now, longtime listeners will be very pleased to find out that we have an actual expert on some of the players we're talking about here, because you've actually watched them. So why don't you start with us with who you would like in terms of big men, and we'll work our way through all of our picks from there.
Yeah, so both of my guys, you'll notice a common theme with them. It'll come up very quickly. My first guy is Oso Ighodaro, and I will put the disclaimer that I think Oso would probably be a better option at 33, or if the Bucks decide to trade back at 33 to later in the second round and to pick up an extra second round pick next year, which I think they should do, honestly. I think Oso would be a great potential backup, either if they ship out Bobby, or regardless, if they ship out Brook and for a reason they decide to go with Bobby at starting center, whatever they decide to do at that center position, I think Oso is a great spot moving forward. He's not necessarily the super defensive presence, not a great rim protector, but solid enough. But the biggest thing with him, two biggest things, is he's mobile is all heck. He's a little skinny, so he'll have to put on a little bit more weight, but he can move and he can pass. His nickname throughout his third and last season at Marquette was Point Oso, just because there were several times where Soccer Smart had him bring up the ball up the court, and he's just a fantastic passer, even for a center. He was one of the best passers in college basketball. His ability, him and Tyler Kolek in the pick and roll was a nightmare, because just with how Marquette's roster is constructed, you have basically three shooters next to two of the best passers in college basketball. And so I think he also has a pretty good post game, not much of a jump shot, but it's not, I think he can develop it a little bit to at least be a pick and pop mid-range shooter. I don't think he'll ever develop into a average or even slightly below average 3-point shooter. I think he'll have the most in his career will be one attempt per game type thing at this peak. But in terms of something you want to do is mobile, can play in pick and roll both offensively and defensively. Does struggle rebounding a little bit. That was a constant struggle for Marquette throughout my entire time there. That was always one of the biggest, you have the point guard, you have the scoring, you have the bench. you just don't have rebounding all that well. So that'll be something else to focus on. But I think he'd be a great spot to have in there for the Bucks as that center of the future or backup center of the future, just to give a little bit more dynamic playmaking and ability to, I guess, just the ability to just be different, I think, is the biggest thing, because and being willing to give up the ball, unlike a certain current backup center. I think that'd be the biggest thing moving forward. So, and honestly, in my own personal stuff, it'd be cool to see him still play at Pfizer every year. So, but yeah, I think Oso would be a great spot to have, both offensively dynamic, and I think there's a little bit of unlocked potential defensively. Not a lot, but enough to be at least an average to maybe above average defender.
Do you see, because this will be the interesting question as we run through a lot of the center prospects, or any big, even wings, like, do you see him in an ideal world? I know he has to add a bit of muscle and everything in drop. Do you think he could fit there? Is he more of like a switching option given his size? Like, in what ideal worlds do you think he would be best used in a defensive scheme?
If he gets up to snuff, I think he could switch out onto guys. I think he has that mobility. As of right now, you probably play him a little bit more in drop, just because there's obviously a massive difference in speed and athleticism from college to the NBA. So I don't know how he'll be able to handle himself. I think he could do fine, but I would just be concerned like first or second year out of the gate. But I think, like I said, at his peak, I think he could be a guy who could switch out and not be roasted and toasted like Rudy Gobert against every Western Conference guard in the playoffs.
Okay. He seems like an interesting, I really haven't read too much into the deeper second round. Very funny. Not that Kevin O'Connor is the end all be all, but he does spend a lot of time doing this. He has shades of Al Horford as the comp. I think also has to probably develop a little bit more of an actual jumper for that to be the case, because that is part and parcel the key of why Al Horford is such a helpful player, especially deep in his career. But do you see Al Horford in Oso?
No, what the hell? What the hell?
That's why it's shades of. It's not actually is. It's shades of.
What kind of shade is this? Is this like the slightly one, like slightly below like the absolute lightest? Like, what is this? No, I would honestly say, like, I can't even think of like a guy. Maybe I guess you could say, yeah, I guess Al Horford without a jumper. I think maybe it's the best way to put it. But honestly, in terms of his passing ability and what he does on the court, in terms of that aspect of it, I would compare him more to Nikola Jokic. In terms of play style, I don't think he's at that level. I don't think he'll ever get to that level. But his ability to pass as a center, I think I would compare him more to that rather than an Al Horford. Because Al Horford's also a big boy at this point. He's putting on a lot of muscle over his career.
He's jacked. He's yoked. Yeah.
So, and I don't think Oso will ever play the power forward spot. I think that's also a big thing. So I can kind of see it, thinking about it a little bit, but also at the same time, it's like, really, Al Horford?
Yeah, it's an interesting take. I'm gonna take that with a bit of a little whatever pinch of salt on that, but it's interesting. I'm glad somebody did a little bit of looking into the deeper second round for sure, because I think there's going to be options there as well. It's obviously much more of a grind, but people are saying Milwaukee is the Serbia of the Midwest, so I think maybe your comparison on Nikola Jokic is not that far off. So, Kyle, do you have any strong feelings about Oso? I don't know how much Marquette basketball you watched this year, but
I didn't watch that much, but he was someone that was interesting. I think, like Jackson mentioned, the skill set is intriguing. His ability to kind of have an offense run through him. I think that is something that is going to be more and more valued as time goes on. So I like him. I would say if he's available at 33, I would absolutely be all for it. No problem with it. Maybe even if somehow he went undrafted, then immediately snap him up. Like, he is intriguing enough. I just don't know enough to determine whether or not it's kind of a yes, he's going to be a good fit in the NBA or anything like that. So, like, I think it's not a bad idea. I think he has a good skill set. Obviously not Nikola Jokic level, but that playing style is going to be something that more and more teams are probably going to look at and want to get with, because again, he's got enough of a game offensively. Defensively is probably where the bigger issue is going to be, just because he's not he was a center at Marquette, which is fine, but he's probably going to be more of like a 4, which for Milwaukee it might be a little bit tougher of a sell, but for another team, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to switch over. I'll talk about my 2 big men relatively quickly. They're stylistically quite different from one another, but I was looking around the 23 mark. This draft is, because it's hard to really evaluate after even the lottery. The top end of the draft is hard to evaluate, it seems like, for a lot of the experts. Hard to tell if these guys are going to be still available. Curious about that, but I have Khalil Ware of Indiana and formerly of Oregon, and then Yves Missy of Baylor. So just a quick run through. Do I have a strong preference versus one of their? I'll just run through what their fit is and then go from there. So Khalil Ware, he's a true 7-footer, but he actually weighs less than Oso. So you talk about needing to add some muscle. Adding muscle is definitely something that Khalil is going to have to do a bit more. He played and started in, I believe, all 30 games for Indiana, averaged like 32 minutes a game. He's an interesting player because he has the idea of a jumper. Now, he doesn't take a lot of them. He was only shot 27% in Oregon, and then he shot 42% last year, but only on a little less than 1.5 threes a game. So it's the idea of a jumper, which I guess when you're at the back end of the first round, you think that's okay. Like maybe you'll work into it. His main things, though, are the length and just the sheer size. And he seems like he has a pretty fluid game, especially compared to Yves, who it seems much more like a defense, and he's just going to be a lob threat more than anything else. So Khalil Ware, interesting in as much as you see if he adds the muscle like a lot of these guys. He has the ability to maybe be switchy because he has the athleticism. He was all defense Big Ten last year, so that's nothing to knock per se. His block numbers, 1.9 blocks a game, pretty good. 2.5 stocks if you add the steals on there, 9.9 rebounds. These are all just counting stats. But the main thing when you watch the film to me is decision making, a little iffy at times with the ball in his hands. And this is DJ Wilson has poisoned these guys for me. He does not like contact. He like in a traditional sense that what you would especially expect of a center, double especially for a center next to Giannis, who your job if you're playing next to Giannis is you're going to take the bullets. That is what you're there for, like especially the majority of the season. So I get nervous about that because he does shy away from contact defensively. The number of times where it's like, okay, Ware is going to really front a guy. He's going to stop this. Oh no, he let the entry pass happen. He didn't really step to the guy. And he's able to correct for that because he has so much length. But in the NBA, that's asking for trouble. Like dudes are just going to go right through you. So interesting there. He's more of an offensive play and the idea of the defense fitting around, but I'm a little nervous about the physicality. The other guy, Yves Missy, I think he plays more so as a forward / center, 6'10", 235 pounds. He's a lot more built than Khalil Ware. You can tell on the court as well. He, I believe, is just 19 going on 20. He's 19 and a half years old. So still pretty young. The defense, I mean, he's ball of energy. He kind of gives me, Bismack Biyombo a little bit, like just the build. He's really, really strong. He's a great rebounder. I think he is a very physical defender, which fits a lot more with what you would want next to Giannis, but has like no semblance of an offensive game at all. It's like Andre Jackson Jr. doesn't have much of an offensive game outside of passing. He doesn't score much himself. Yves would be exclusively like lob threat guy, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but we also don't have anybody on the team besides Chris who throws lobs. So it's like, okay, how is Missy going to score? Okay, he's not. All right, okay, like, can we work around that? Is that something we can work around? For the record, he played 34 games in Baylor. For Baylor this past year. He didn't take a single three, so he literally has no jump shot at all. So that's also a huge mitigating factor. If I was to advocate for him, it would be almost exclusively as he's probably going to be a bench big and more of a defensive option that you throw out there if you want to switch things up, rather than you pick him and like, okay, now we have the guy who's going to play next to Giannis. He would probably be a defensive wrecking guy that you sort of switch with Giannis as centers, and you just do a switching defense with a physical guy. Not the worst thing in the world. And at his age, he has upside, but the fact that it's all lobs is a huge concern to me. So those two guys kind of jumped out at me. There's a lot of like tweener in between guys in that height. I mean, Oso is another guy like 6'9". Deron Holmes is like 6'9". Excuse me. So a lot of guys who you could say maybe he could be a center if you downsize it a little bit. But these two guys kind of jumped out as me as like, oh, they have some interesting potential at least. So I don't know if you guys have strong thoughts on either of those players.
I am really high on Eves, Missy. Just like looking at his profile, it has the athleticism that I was looking for in terms of being able to execute a zone drop or a switching. He seems to have a good grasp on it, so that would make sense in terms of like a Brooks successor to have someone like you get him this year. He learns a year under Brook, kind of gets more used to the NBA speed as that backup big. And I think he is someone that would be great in the long term for executing different defensive plays out. So I like him a lot. I don't care that he has no semblance of offense. I realize 2 of my 3 prospects do not have any semblance of offense, but I think their defense is just so good. And I also, when I was looking at Ware's just like minuses on the Ringer, it's just like effort and focus have wavered going back to high school. He'll disappear for an entire half.
Me too, guy. Out. Me too, brother. That's why I said I see a little bit of myself in Khalil Ware. That's why. That's where
I just not like it. It was like, yeah. And I think my favorite was his size suggests he could have a value as a screener, except he's not good at setting picks. It's like I can't live with those negatives. Like those negatives are like these are damning negatives, and especially as Riley, you mentioned, like what makes AJ Green also pretty valuable is he actually can set a screen that no one else on his team can. So that was my biggest thing with Ware. I understand in terms of the offensive aspect of Ware, and it seems as though he has more of a better feel offensively than Missy, but it just feels like Missy has more of a, if he needed to come off the bench, like for in terms of like this upcoming season, he seems like Missy's more of a better fit. Just to like defensively plug, you can put him in, replace Brook, and it's not like you're missing as much of a beat.
Jackson, thoughts on those guys at all?
Yeah, with those red flags with Ware, like those are like, oh, he doesn't have a jump shot, but he's good defensively, like Missy is. Like those are like livable red flags because you know what you're getting. Lack of effort, not being able to set screens as a center are like the base level stuff you expect out of any center you're going to draft, or any center in the league for that matter. Like some guys are going to be better than others, but you also expect like the centers to do the base center things, which is setting screens, rebounding, and scoring in the paint. So I don't know how good of a rebounder Ware is. I was just taking a look at Missy's rebounding stats. 5.6 per game is all right. Not exactly what I would be hoping for out of someone who's 6'11". But I kind of envision like if he is the backup center, I like the idea of like him like playing the 5 and Bobby playing the 4 if they decide to keep Bobby. I think Bobby at this point in his career probably fits better at power forward, even though he'd probably get cooked a lot by some 4s and some wings. I'd much rather deal with that than guys just penetrating on Bobby to the paint and him providing no rim protection. Whereas if we had Yves Missy back there, it would at least be able to counteract some of the leaky perimeter defense that this team has. So I think another defensive center would be beautiful to have at this stage with this roster.
Yeah, I think Ware is definitely much more of like you're projecting into the future. Okay, maybe he like really uncovers something, and now you have to like he's good enough that you start really adjusting the way the team plays around. Like you have to incorporate him. Now that's a far shot to take at 23. Especially, and I also worry about any guy who comes in, and this is kind of also with guards, depending on what their skill set, but if you're coming to a team like the Bucks, and no matter who these guys get drafted, they're probably not going to be starter. And even if they were, you're just not going to get fed the looks necessarily if you're an offensive player to really like develop the way that you might think. So can he dial it back and continue to work on his craft and then all of a sudden be good? I don't know about that. Missy definitely feels like a lot more, you understand, okay, maybe the rebounding isn't amazing, but it's more so the physicality to allow Giannis to do rebounding, optionality off the bench. And it's okay that he doesn't have an offense because we won't give him shots anyhow. So like, don't worry about that necessarily. So I think there are flaws to both. They're both definitely projects. I think Khalil might be a little bit more upside in theory, but yeah, all the red flags around that, I cop to the fact that those are not encouraging per se. But if we got either of those guys, I wouldn't be upset. I think they would be interesting. At least it would be an interesting pick in each case. Like, okay, are we doing offense or defense? What do we think the belief is here? So that's okay. So that's what we got for our centers. We're gonna slide down a little bit. We're going to wings now. Now Kyle has our wings on lock. So Kyle, I'm gonna hand it off to you. Who do you like for the wings spots for the Bucks at 23?
So you people that are listening to this, there is going to be a SB Nation, like we did a mock draft, and different contributors from all the sites made their picks. I made my pick. I went with Ryan Dunn, who is a sophomore out of Virginia. He is 6'6" with a 7'1" wingspan, which, my God, that is great. 21, going on 22, so still relatively young. This guy, I said this guy had a skill set that you just simply cannot pass. His defense, like people are saying, I think Sam Vecini from The Athletic said this is the best defensive prospect I have seen. Kevin O'Connor said he's the best defender in the class. When you look at the scouting report, it's just he has the ability to just excel. Good wing protection for a wing. His wingspan allows him to cover up stuff. He covers a lot of ground. He knows he knows what he can do on offense. He's still a good finisher around the rim, but like his defense is that of someone that is probably going to be. It's that good, which is very encouraging for me. Because it seems to like one of the biggest things is the Bucks don't have wing defenders and they don't have athleticism. This guy is ticking every box. Now, his offense is not good. Like, we're just going to get that out of the way. Doesn't really have he cannot shoot. Can't really create his own shot. So a lot of his buckets are going to have to be transition. And even they said, like, even if he's an open floor or covered by a slower player, he just wants to move the ball. So not really someone that's going to get you a lot of buckets. If he's gonna get it, it's gonna be more like backdoor cuts. But the fact that two people have said like this guy is really, really good defensively, I think you can't pass up on it. And with New York seemingly wanting him at 24, 25, like this might be someone that you just take, steal him away so that it doesn't go to a team that you're going to be competing with in the Eastern Conference in the next. But his defense is amazing. So that for me was kind of like the biggest thing is, yeah, he doesn't have much of an offense, but this is an NBA. This is someone you could actually throw in day one off the bench. And he seems to be someone that can do the job. The comparisons were Herb Jones and Andre Roberson. You know, if it's Andre Roberson, that's still pretty damn good, especially on the defensive side. Herb Jones would be the better of the two, but that's why especially highlighted. And then there's another one I didn't put on the outline, but there's another wing. This might be someone around 33, Jalen Tyson. He's a junior out of California, and he is like the opposite of Ryan Dunn, where his offense is fantastic, creates his own shot. He was the point, like he pretty much was the main guy for California. Can score in the post, good shooter off the dribble, can hit, catch and shoot threes. He shot 36% from three on 4.5 attempts. So pretty solid, active rebounder, willing to crush the boards. He's like versatile enough. So like, he's not going to get complete, like off the ball is where he'll thrive. On ball, he might get cooked, but he is someone that is high risk, high reward. It seems as though because of his over reliance on Cal, he might be a little inconsistent. He might have done more high risk plays, getting more reckless turnovers, maybe not making the best decision making. But that might more so be he was asked to do so much that it maybe wore him down. So I think offensively, he would be great. It could be like a Chris successor as well, just in terms of what he's able to do with the ball. The fact that he is able to shoot off the dribble and be able to catch and shoot, that's going to be great for him. That he's not going to be as limited like some of the guys like Wes Matthews when he was there, Pat Connaughton, what Jay Crowder's supposed to be, stuff like that. So those are the two wings that I especially wanted to highlight. Like I said, Ryan Dunn is going to be you can put him in right now. Defensively, he's going to be great. And Jalen Tyson he has the offense, and especially someone that seems to not, maybe a lower usage might be a benefit to him.
I think Dunn seems super interesting. He is the name that I've heard a lot about because of the superlatives about the defense, because there's so many guys outside the lottery. It's like, thing on the fit, he could be this, could be that. He has like this one skill. I mean, that Dunn continues to come up because of his specific skill set. As my dog barks outside my door right now. Hold on one second. So I'm going to hand off to Jackson, who's going to talk about Ryan Dunn while I figure that out.
Yeah, I didn't know much about Ryan Dunn until now, but I just took a quick glance at his stats on ESPN. Obviously not a good 3-point shooter, not a good free throw shooter. Shot 7 of 35 from 3, 12 of 51 in his 2 years at Virginia. Shot 52 of 99 in terms of free throws during his 2-year season at Virginia. But the thing that stood out to me from last year, averaged nearly 7 rebounds a game as a wing and 2.3 blocks.
I did note that as his block percentage was significantly better than like any other center prospect I've looked at so far in this draft.
It's like I was flabbergasted. I was a Smiggledorf, as SpongeBob would say. Like that is like, not saying he'll ever be this, but in terms of the comparison, like that is like Dwayne Wade levels of blocking for a guard / wing. Like his freshman season, 1.1. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, he's a big wing. He'll get some blocks, whatever. But 2.3, that is really impressive. That sticks out to me a lot. So that either means he's probably doing a lot in help defense and just getting into the paint, which the Bucks desperately need. And he's probably blocking a lot of shots because he's clamping guys up who are just trying to get a last-second shot in. So I really, really like that. I think Ryan Dunn would be a fantastic fit. I think the more defense you can add with this team, the better. Maybe spend a little bit more of your free agency resources and bring in veteran offensive players. Maybe that's the calculus the Bucks will go with.
Like 15 minutes a bit.
But overall, yeah, I really like Ryan Dunn. I think I would not be mad if he was the pick at 23.
Beautiful. Kyle, I apologize. Did you consider Tristan da Silva a big? I might have skipped over that.
No, I did have him considered a wing, but the problem is it seems as though every mock draft lately has him not being potential at 23. So I had put Tristan da Silva earlier in the week, and then because that was a name I know, it was profiled on Brew Hoop, and then I've been seeing mock drafts and draft big boards, and I think he's not going to be there. I do like him as well. Someone that can shoot, someone that offensively seems to tick all the boxes. 39.5% from 3 on almost 5 attempts is pretty. I like that. That is encouraging to see. But I just don't think he's going to be available at 23. So I kind of didn't want to go too in depth on him.
There's no such thing as having too many good wing players. So I tend to agree, like, if Dunn is there, again, yet another guy. There's a lot of guys in this draft is like, I don't feel strongly enough about, or I can see the vision, and Dunn quite easily because of the defense. You see the vision of how the fit would be in any sort of NBA team. So I tend to agree with that. We'll kind of then go a little bit smaller. We're going to go into our guard area. I'm going to also be quick about mine because similar to Tristan da Silva, he's been mocked above where the Bucks are. Would be Jared McCain. This is off of the assumption that you can pair 23 and 33 or 23 plus somebody if you wanted to move up to get this guy. 6'3", was a freshman at Duke. It's really about shooting, and he's almost 200 pounds at 6'3". Like he's pretty stockily built for that. But the play there is not even passing. It's literally shooting, like being a shooting guard and being a point of attack defender, which is not bad. But he started all 36 games with Duke. Like that's not a bad thing. I also should note he's a known journaler. He journals often. I want to find out what's the paper pen combo. Now, I think Kevin O'Connor asked him what he journals about, and he just said he journals about his gratitude. So sounds like not like my journal per se, but that's okay. Everybody can journal however they would like. That's what it's there for. So he would be a play of like, can you survive with two smaller guards, one of them being more defensively minded? I think the point of attack defense from the guard spots, especially if it's Pat Bev, as Jackson already pointed out, Pat Bev's just Bobby Portis except smaller. So, it's much more Matador defense than it is actual point of attack defense, which has its value. But McCain is the young guy, upside shooter. Can you survive with two small guards? And can you move up to get up more than anything else? But I just wanted to give him a shout out because I thought it was interesting. He actually, the Bucks also actually worked him out. So something to keep in mind as well, that he actually has been with the Bucks too. So that was my guard. Let's swing back. We'll go the other way because I want to end on the highest superlative of the most strongly felt of the guard picks here. So I'm going to swing back to Kyle. Kyle, who would your pick be in the guard range?
I'll keep it short as well. I had Bub Carrington, who was freshman at Pittsburgh, 6'3", 6'8" wingspan though. So again, I just seem to want to go back to the John Hammond days of just get dudes with long arms. Seems to be someone that can be a good playmaker, but also can pull up, like be able to dribble, shoot off the dribble, and that is encouraging. He definitely is someone that might need a more reduced role will be necessary. Not really someone that's going to break down the defense in terms of like driving kicks. Also seems as though he can't shoot threes, like catch and shoot threes, which is weird, but I guess it was one of those words like both Kevin O'Connor and Vinicius were like, yeah, he can't shoot threes like for some reason, but he can shoot everything else that's necessary. So maybe it's just a mechanical issue. I was like, oh no, we're getting flashbacks. Thank God Josh Oppenheimer's out there, so maybe that's a problem. So I don't know. Again, someone that off the bench seems to tick the boxes, could keep the offense flowing well enough to handle the non-Dame minutes and not rely on Giannis and Chris. So that's why I had as my guard.
Yeah, if you need a gunner off the bench, this dude's that guy. Like he has never seen a shot he does not like. Watching the film was very funny because yes, he just constantly is like, all right, I'm going for it. All right, pull up. Like, it's very, very funny to watch him. And he has like fastish hands defensively, but yeah, it's definitely like a gunner play off the bench more than anything else, especially early in his career. All right. Jackson, we're finally clearing out. Unless do you have Bub or Jared McCain thoughts at all?
Quickly, I do like Jared McCain for his two-way ability, and if he's a good catch and shoot three-point guy. I think the smaller guard issue, I think, is more so if it's like a leaky defensive guy or a below average defensive. If Jared McCain could be an average to above average defender, point of attack defender, and not have Dave have to guard like De'Aaron Fox. I know a random name, but just a guy who comes to mind. Or guys like that every night. I think that's a huge win for you and allows Dame to cook a little bit more of what he was trying to do. So yeah, I think I like that. Bub Carrington, yeah, if you want a little bit more of an offensive punch off the bench, which I think the Bucks do need from a guard. They have it from Bobby at center at times, but they don't really have that punching guard like a Jamal Crawford for the Clippers or whatever team he ever played for. So not saying Bub Carrington's going to be Jamal Crawford, but I think he can be somewhat of a guy in that type of role.
I did enjoy when you look at the comparison for Jared McCain on the Ringer. It's like somewhere between Steph and Seth Curry. It's like that is a range. That is quite a large gap. We're talking generational player or a dude. That is a gap
player.
I mean, definitely for sure. All of the shades of are just the most hilarious thing ever. It's like you said, either Hall of Famer or like guy that you forgot was even in the league. You're like, okay, well, I know you got to do what you got to do, but okay. All right, we made it. He made it the whole podcast. He's been good. We finally will allow him to roll out the red carpet for his pick if the Bucks were to get a guard. Jackson, who are we picking?
So it happens to be the best facilitator over the last two seasons at the point guard position. He just also so happens to play for a school I went to and plays in a certain arena that the Bucks also play in, and that is Mr. Tyler Kolek out of Marquette, a Big East Player of the Year during his junior year. Helped Marquette get their first Big East regular season and tournament title. Got to be there for that, so it's a quick flex for that. That was fun. But he offensively is nearly the complete package, and I think would be a beautiful piece to have off this Bucks bench. Like I said, floor general, can run the pick and roll extremely well, finds guys. He said over and over, his job is to find guys, run the offense, and then maybe get a shot for himself every now and then. If you want a floor general guard, that's the perfect guy you want. He's a really good shooter, shot well above average in the three-point line, and by his own admission, shot 46% on catch and shoot threes, which for this Bucks team, if you want to, for whatever reason, run him with Dame or run him out there with Giannis, having him as an actual good catch and shoot three guy is fantastic. And big game player. We talked a little bit about pre-show where he stole the ball away from Trent Frazier for Illinois, and it was when his first season there, they beat number 10 Illinois, taking down UConn, even though he had 4 fouls during his junior year. Hits a 3 with a cut in his face last year against Providence, and when they were beating them down 25-4. So lots of ups offensively, and he's a guy that gives max effort every night. He can get into the passing lanes. He's not going to be the point of attack defender that you're hoping for, but it's not like he's going to be lazy or can't play solid defense at times. The big thing is he doesn't have much of a mid-range game, and part of that is just the style of offense that Marquette ran. It was very pro style, where it's like you're either going to shoot a 3 or we're going to get to the rim, which is obviously most efficient shots in basketball, but there's not much. He can create off the dribble a little bit, but it's not going to be much in the 3-point. He'll either get to the basket or try and get himself a 3. Not super athletic in the slightest. And again, size-wise, he is 6'3", but he is around 187-ish pounds, 190 pounds. So he'll add some muscle. But, and I wrote this in the profile, he reminds me a lot of recent playoff villain TJ McConnell. I think he's a better passer and shooter than TJ McConnell already, but a feisty defensive guy who can pass the ball, shoot some threes from time to time, and just give you, like I said, max effort on every play. I think Tyler Kolek would be fantastic. And his last workout is going to be with the Bucks. His most recent, like there's rumors that the Suns want him, which is one pick ahead of the Bucks, so he's well within that range. If they really want to snag him, maybe send like a future second-round pick and just move up one spot, or even send like Pat Connaughton to the Suns to move up one spot along with their own picks. So yes, there are some defensive minuses with him. I will acknowledge that, but I think he adds a lot of different things that this Bucks team needs, which is floor general and offensive creativity off the bench, catch and shoot, and consistent efforts on the defensive end.
I think Kolek is a very interesting player. I continually just worry about the small guard stuff. Now, if he's off the bench primarily, that's okay. I think he can survive. I think both him and Dame, for obvious reasons, is kind of a tough fit. Probably a little bit more of a, as Dame kind of peters off a little bit, then Kolek can kind of step in, and maybe you had that handover one day, depending on how things work out with Dame. And the real question is, okay, what's the fit next to Giannis in particular? Because part of what I'm thinking with some of these players too is like trying to find that balance between Bucks 1.0, which we're in sort of in now, Bucks 1.5, and then what's the back half of Giannis's career look like? And do you need that like superlative guard? I mean, Dame is a decent to good passer, but I have a feeling maybe Kolek might be a better pure passer. Whether it translates to the NBA, we'll see. But that's something I'd be curious about too as well. We haven't really, outside of Chris, had awesome passing to connect everything. It's a lot more kind of each guy calls his own number and we go from there. So I think he's an interesting player. I wouldn't be mad at it. I think it's very funny. Bud cannot quit toolsy white guys to be his draft picks. That's his thing. And Tyler Kolek's the latest in a long line of guys just like that. So I'd be curious about it. It would be interesting paired with that. And then who they get at 33. I think that would be that's like one of those picks is like, okay, now 33 or what they do with that second pick. That's what's really interesting. Or what do they get in trades for guys? So I see the fit. I see the vision, probably a little bit more of a like 2 or 3 year play. And have him, like you said, kind of, you don't have to keep running through backup point guards because that's something the Bucks constantly do as well. It's like, last year was campaign. It was what's his face in the title year that we DJ Augustine. We've run through a lot of different backup
George Hill.
Yeah, George Hill. We run through a lot of backup point guards, which makes sense. But if you can get something where you don't have to worry about that and it's cost controlled, maybe that's the best of both worlds. So that's my thoughts on Kolek. Kyle, any feeling on that?
Yeah, I mean, Jackson already said like the offensive skills are as good as you can ask for. And it was funny because in the SB Nation mock draft, it was one of those where Phoenix was desperately wanting him, but he got taken 1 pick before via New Orleans. So it's kind of funny. It was just like Phoenix got upset that they didn't get their guy. So they took Missy, which then upset me. So then I took Ryan Dunn, which then upset New York. It was kind of a funny, just like trickle down of all of it. But no, Kolek's got everything you can ask for in a guard. Like you said, I mean, he would be the ideal rotation team needs a guard to come in, run the offense. It would be a better DJ Augustine, in my opinion. Not at DJ Augustine's prime, but when the Bucks had DJ Augustine, he could shoot. Like, he's just reliable. I think that's the biggest thing about him. And I didn't watch much Marquette, but when I did, it was like he was the guy. Like, he is what made everything work. And if he was off, the whole team was off. And I think that's encouraging. He's someone that's comfortable on the ball. So, no, I think Kolek offensively is something that every team would need and want. It's just defensive. The big question is just going to be defensively, because he is smaller. So will he be okay? And it's not going to be for lack of effort. It's just going to be, all right, now you're going to have to like deal with guys that are bigger and faster than you. Can you handle that wear and tear on the defensive side? And for Milwaukee, it would just be really tough. Like, he would have to come off the bench and like basically whatever minutes Dame doesn't play, he would have to take over, because him and Dame as the same backcourt would be. It would make the Malik Dame, it would make the Malik Dame combo look like one of the greatest duos of all time. I think they'd score 160, they'd allow 154. So, all
right, and God knows
Kolek.
God knows the Bucks need more guys who are capable of just bringing the ball up the court. So that alone, if Kolek does nothing else besides like reliably get it across the halfway line of the court, we'll say that's a huge win at pick 23. Okay, cool. Well, I think we've run through everybody. I know we're going a little long here, but what we'll do is I think after the draft, we'll wait for the picks to play out Wednesday, Thursday, see where the Bucks end up, and probably do a quicker hits on whoever the Bucks do end up picking. Thank you, Jackson and Kyle, for running all through that. I feel like slightly more informed on this draft than I thought I was going to be a couple months ago. So that's hopefully we pick a guy who I've actually heard about. So fingers crossed. Okay.
I actually put in effort. So that if that tells you anything about this draft,
I was listening back to our last podcast episode, and I remember asking, I was like, Kyle, like how much, like, what's your analysis going to be on the draft? And you were just dead silent. I was like, okay, cool. Great. So thank you, Kyle, for putting in the effort and being here on the draft preview pod. We appreciate you. All right, we're going to jump into miscellaneous really, really quick rapid fire because I want you guys to go enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Here we go. This first one, we're going to start with Kyle, but then obviously we'll go back to Jackson. Is Jay Crowder's NBA career over?
God, I hope so.
Jackson.
No, I think there'll be someone who he's played with before that will give him one last shot. Maybe Bud will be like, "Hey, you want to come back to Phoenix real quick?" Or something along those lines. Or I'm trying to think of where else he played. Like maybe Boston gives him another shot. Maybe Brad Stevens is like, "You know what? This is where you were probably the best. Come back." So maybe.
I love the idea of Jay Crowder, of Bud somehow loving the Jay Crowder experience enough that he says, fuck it, I want him back on my team again. Okay. Are the Detroit Pistons, who just fired Monty Williams, the ideal Adrian Griffin landing spot? Not that Adrian Griffin's actually to get that job, but is that the actual kind of job Adrian Griffin should have gotten rather than ours?
Yes. He should have gotten a low expectation, work with young guys. Because he did play young guys, so Detroit would have been a good fit.
Yeah, I think it probably would have been a better spot for him, but also job security might also be around the same it was with the Bucks if they're firing Monty Williams after 1 year after giving him the biggest coaching contract ever.
Yeah, it's a fair point. He also makes it to 40-some games. Wow, that's like Adrian Griffin's the 40 game firefighter, and we salute him for that. Okay, that'll probably be the last time I ever talk about Adrian Griffin. Your best draft pick in the past. So the way that I'm couching this is you've looked at picks in the past. You said, oh, this is my guy, preferably in the back end of the first round. Obviously, if you say Victor Wembanyama, of course, yes, that was my best draft pick as well. I'm going to start so you guys can think about it, but essentially, guy you believed in that was drafted and lived up to the promise for you. I think I've done this before, but my top one was Kelly Olynyk or Dennis Schroeder, who were in the same draft as Giannis. Now, I will admit, I didn't even hear of Giannis before we picked him, so I have to take the miss on that big time, but I saw the vision with Kelly Olynyk, unfortunately, and Dennis Schroeder to a certain extent. Both have been like journeymen to slightly above average NBA players. They're both kind of petering out now. Olynyk's is he still with the Jazz? I think he's just finishing his career in Utah or whatever. And obviously,
no, he's with the Raptors.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Well, okay. So he's, his days as like a real impact player are over. Probably the same for Schroeder, who was getting it up in Brooklyn. But those two guys, I thought, they might have something. And it turned out that more or less they were NBA players. So those are my two guys I will take credit for.
I will go Jared Allen. That was probably back in like 2017 because I feel like it was like Jared Allen and I think like Harry Giles were like the two ones that everyone was like,
Harry Giles. Yeah.
And I was like, no, absolutely not. So I would say that. I don't really have any other one that I can think of off the top of my head. I feel like I've had more like, yeah, that wouldn't be a bad option. Why not? But I haven't had like a clear cut. I think Jared Allen's like the only one. I was like, yes, I like his game.
That's pretty good. 22nd overall, one-time All-Star, which is better than my guys. So you can take the victory lap on that one, Kyle. How about you, Jackson? Did you have somebody deeper in one of the drafts that you liked?
I'll first go with probably my worst, just because I remember it vividly. Probably Mo Bamba. You're
not alone. You're not alone.
I remember watching the 2018 draft and being like, I was so pissed at Orlando. I was cursing them out so much. I was like, why are you taking another center? You have Nikola Vucevic. What are you doing? And it's funny because the Bulls, before they traded him, ended up with the better center between those two guys. Anyways, and Wendell Carter. So I'll take the L on that. But my W also comes from that same draft, and that would be Mikal Bridges. Looking back on it, I was like, I think this guy could be really good. Obviously played with Villanova, was a national championship guy. But just looking back on it, I'm like, why did Philly ever trade him? Like, imagine Philadelphia at that, what was that? That was the year before they would have traded for Jimmy Butler. Imagine a lineup with, who was there? Ben Simmons, Mikal Bridges, Jimmy Butler. Maybe they still trade for Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid. Like, that's a fantastic lineup. And even if you look at it now, it would be Tyrese Maxey, Mikal Bridges, and Joel. Like, that's a fantastic big three out east. So I will take my W on Mikal Bridges.
I'm trying to see who got picked for those trades. Johnny O'Brien was part of the trade that one of the second round picks that the Bucks ended up with, and JOB, shout out JOB, related to the Mikal Bridges saga. So that's a pretty good pick too, Mikal Bridges, 10th overall. He's a Philly guy too, right? That was like, I remember the whole thing was like, oh, it's his mom was like weeping. It was like, oh, it's how, because his mom worked for the Sixers, I believe, in like some capacity. It was like, oh,
yeah, he was
born
like in Philly.
that. Yeah. Well, shout out to the Sixers who suck and ruined a family's dreams. That's what they do. So they just keep into the type for that one. Okay, final question. This one should be pretty easy. Don't think about the difficulty in doing it. Just pure passion. What is one foreign language you would love to learn?
French.
Italian.
Mine would be Portuguese. All right, very good. Thank you guys. That's my 4 rapid fire. Kyle, do you feel like you want to do your film review? No? Okay.
Nope.
Then we're going to skip right past it. We're going right to Jackson's build to wrap this one up. I'm going to put Jackson's solo screen. Again, another treat for the video watchers over on YouTube. Jackson, what do you have for us in Jackson's build this week?
Okay. It's obviously been a while since I've been on, so I don't remember if I showed this the last time, so I'll show it again anyway for people who might have missed it the other time. The Darth Vader helmet. And now thinking about it, I think I did show this the last time, but hey, who cares? The other one I have to go grab because it is a bigger one. So just give me 1 second here.
You're good. I will say while Jackson's doing this, he did not do the Darth Vader head. The last couple of editions we've had, the AT-AT, I believe. Oh, here we go. Oh, check this out. Hold on. And he's back.
Okay.
All right, go for it.
So the reason why I put it as all Vader is because this is Darth Vader's Super Star Destroyer from episode 5 and 6. So let's here get a little look of it like this. So it has a nice little stand on it here. It's really cool. You have these little like regular size Star Destroyers that fly alongside on these like clear plastic tubing here. This was a lot of fun. I bought this along with buying my mom the Buckbeak set from Harry Potter. So all my Harry Potter fans, there you go. If you're into that. Nice little fun. You get all these little engines back here with the little orange clear Lego pieces. Love just how much like detail, like how many different pieces I had to use for like this entire thing in the middle. Like there's just so many random pieces to make it look like the actual center of the ship. This was a lot of fun. It was a lot bigger than I thought it would be. It was because it was like around $80 on the Lego store. So I was like, how big is it gonna really be? Like, I don't know. And then actually putting together, it's over 1.5 feet long. So I'll take it. Massive W as I poke off a piece, but I'll fix it later. But if I had to give it, I would probably give it a 8 out of 10 Lego bricks.
That's pretty good. I think it's an iconic ship. It has a kind of more of a cameo role except for like ramming into the Death Star, right? Don't they drive it into the Death Star accidentally or something? Don't they crash it or no?
They do. Yes, okay. I think they do.
Obviously not on purpose. I'm not, not accusing anybody of incompetence. That was purposeful that they drove it into the Death Star. It looks really good though.
No way.
Yeah, no. I think especially the Lego to the version that I recall off the top of my head in the movie, it's definitely as close to a 1-to-1 as you can get. So it looks really cool. And you did not show us the Vader head, so Vader head is cool as well.
Okay, cool. Perfect.
Yeah. Oh, I am of the opinion that the Star Destroyer is cooler. Not cooler than the Death Star, but it's probably like the second coolest kind of like ship, whatever, like big Star Wars thing, in my opinion.
It's iconic. The downside to Darth Vader's ship is that it doesn't have the big stack, because that's what really drives home. It has the same, like, obviously angular, triangular design, but it doesn't have the big stack on top. And you think of the big stack with the roundels on top. That's like, of course, it's iconic, but it is super cool.
Yeah, they retired that set a while ago, the regular Star Destroyers, and now those are basically like $1,200 to $2,000 if you want to get your hands on that. And like, it's a big set, but like they have the Republic version of those before they came the actual Star Destroyers, and it's only like $650, like comparatively.
You need to get into speculating on Lego sets. That's the next level of like crypto's for the birds, bro. We got to figure out what the Lego sets are going to be.
See, and it's funny because people always go like, oh, why don't adults have more hobbies? Because it's expensive. Like, this is expensive, and it shouldn't be this much money. Like the Legend of Zelda had an Ocarina of Time set, like the old, like the 4 set, and that was like $300-$400. Like, well, okay, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, like they have a Daily Bugle for Spider-Man, and it's like $300 or $400.
People are buying it, they'll make it, and that's the ethos at Lego and everything that runs the world. I want to thank you, Jackson, for showing that to us. Very cool, as always. I'm glad that the bit keeps going. We continue to have more and more, so I appreciate you being able to bring it with us here. Kyle, will give you time to catch up, finish your show before you bring back the film review. And hopefully I'll have some fountain pen stuff in the future, but we will wrap that up there at 1 hour and 30 minutes. This is a full podcast. I appreciate you guys doing the research. I appreciate all the listeners. We'll break this up so it makes it easier for you to navigate to the draft part and everything like that for those who are interested. Like I said, the draft this coming week, we will let the draft picks play out, come back, do something a little bit more brief just to talk about whoever the Bucks pick, and then it's into free agency and the chaos of the opening portion of the NBA offseason, which we will be back for to analyze as well. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe. Monday Morning Media Roundup. The Wednesday weekly wrap up is on hiatus right now because the season is not happening, and that's okay. And Jackson has a finger pointer. Jackson, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I believe Van and I are doing a stream on playback for the first round of the NBA draft. So please make sure to head on over there and watch us react to the first round and actually try and figure out who some of the guys are that are at the top of this draft. So
it'll be, and that's at playback.tv/brewhoop. I will throw that into the show notes as well. And obviously we'll be promoting it over on the site and on social media as well. So thank you guys so much. We'll talk to you again, probably a week from now.